Good evening, friends. I greet you all this evening in the wonderful name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. My name is Aviwe Mdaniso. I'm glad to be here today, and I will be the anchor for today's show. As we draw closer to the end of August, which is recognized as the Women's Month in South Africa, and I've seen throughout this month, we've been in, men and females have been in the forefront in solidarity with women who have been abused and calling for the abuse of women and children to end. And today, as we're about to end this month, we decided to have a mini men's conference, not to overtake the conversations that our fellow sisters and mothers are having with regards to gender-based violence, but also to get the perspective from the men's side, because I've always men who commit this abuse. So men should be in the forefront, calling for it to end. All the men should stand, young and old, should stand and say, "Not in my name." And in that manner, we shall end. I foresee a society that is gender-based violence free. But I believe that it is men, young and old, who are supposed to say no to it. So today I've got three guests. We'll be talking about the gender-based violence. We don't have a proper or perhaps an agenda or a way that we've scheduled it, but we'll just be getting an experience and also the impact in our congregation as the Methodist Church. So allow me to introduce from my left-hand side, I've got Umfundisi Uakhona Xamza, minister at Calvary Methodist Church in Randburg. Just next to him, I've got Mr. Porter from the Commission of Gender Equality. And then from my far left, I've got Umfundisi Uanele Bonoi, who's also a minister of the Methodist Church, currently at Mondio Methodist Church. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to having a great conversation with you. Let me start with you, Mfundisi Xamza, and get your experience, particularly from the faith-based side, as a faith-based leader. How have you encountered GBV, in what sense, and what impact does it have on congregation at large?
Well, thank you, Mdagam Daniso, for the opportunity, and just to also take the opportunity to greet those who are viewing us, parts of our connection, and those who are following us from different pages. Perhaps as a point of genesis, let me say that upon the call by the presiding bishop, to all Methodists to take a stand and to provide leadership with regards to issues of gender-based violence. I think across our connection we have seen all departments, ministries and churches running programs. And so this has given me time and an opportunity to do a study. And I have realized, as my opening statement, that I have realized that the issue of gender-based violence, it is not something that is in the mind of men. In other words, there is no way that when a man sees a female, what that man sees is a punching bag or an instrument of that one can use to effect abuse. And it is not something that is in the heart. So it is rooted in the structure of society. And so I would want to say, as my opening statements, knowing fully well that the church is in the world, the church is for the world, even though the church is not of this world. And therefore the church is not immune from issues that affect society. But one of the things that I have discovered as I was trying to unravel the historic developments of gender-based violence and everything else that is coupled with it, I have realized that it is not in the heart of man. It is not in the mind of man. In fact, it is rooted in the structure of society. Maybe later I'll get an opportunity to share what I call dialectic materialism and the philosophy that goes with violence. In other words, the psychology of oppression and violence, and at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Indeed, I hear you, Mfundisi, but I just want to get from Mr. Porter. As a commission, you would remember now on the 26th, or a few days before the 26th, the president announced the national lockdown due to coronavirus. And Mfundisi Klams has just said something very mindful, that gender-based violence is rooted within the structure of the society, and how perhaps maybe nobody is born violent. Yeah. So now, as a commission, when the president announced the national lockdown, few weeks later or few days later, he came back and said there's another pandemic, are more at home, are more with their families. Then he says men have become violent the more they spend time with their wives and their children. They've become violent as the statistics were going up. And more especially, we've seen also young men killing their boyfriends. As a commission, what is your experience in that, and what is your role in the eradication of gender-based violence within the society?
Well, thank you so much. But I just want to foreground what I'm going to say by, in fact, starting off saying that it's so important that the church becomes central, because it can't be normal when the body of Christ is in pain, then the church looks the other way. The church can't continue with the rituals always. It's important to pray. It's important to aspire to go to heaven. And thanks God we'll go to heaven. But the reality is that we're still here, and the body of Christ is in pain. So for grounding, my entry is that, in fact, at the core of violence are the four of us. That the four of us as men, unless and until we acknowledge that the elephant in the room is you and I, all of us, unless we say that we must take responsibility and change the narrative. But also, Mfundisi talks about it's not in the mind, it's not in the heart. But I want to say that and argue this evening that it's all about how all of us here sitting here were raised. We were raised to believe that women were less created by God. They were of a lesser creation. We were raised to believe that women were not leaders. We were raised, no wonder, even the church we are at, when you look at it, in its history, it's for the first time you have a presiding bishop, a woman, who incidentally was also the first bishop of the same church. So at the core of it, we must acknowledge that it is our upbringing, how the things that I call them social scripting. You and I, the four of us, you are raised. It doesn't matter, black, white, colored, Indian. What is common about us is that you are always told that, but look here, you are the best thing that happened to creation. The message is always, you are the head of the family. You are in charge. You are in control. You grow up understanding that, in fact, your role in this world, it is to lord over women. You grow up, the four of us, that look here, I am here to lord over. I am here to oversee, to be in charge of women. In the process, what you do, you then have unending power. You have unending privileges. Look, the four of us here, we sit here and we must be humble enough and say that all of us men in the world, we exercise this unending power, unending privileges. Purely and simply because we're male. Purely and simply because of our anatomy. Others argue that, look, it was God's design that I may be leader. I have difficulties. I struggle with all of those. And my struggle is that this power, the power imbalances we have in our society, they are at the core of what we're talking about here. When we talk about GBV, and I gravitate towards your opening of you. Your opening for me was deep, was profound. When you acknowledge that at the center, it must be us, men, because women don't rape themselves.
Indeed.
Women don't violate themselves.
Indeed.
Don't harass themselves. Women in the church here don't quieten themselves. It is the stewards. It is the men of the cloth. It's generally the congregation that says, look, don't. It is uncultural. It's ungodly. Don't talk about these things. So I want to argue that all of us here, we are guilty of the sins of silence. And unless the church repents, unless the church says with one voice that, look, men in the church, you are the elephant in the room, unless the church confronts patriarchy, a system that says to all of us, you were born as superior. A system, unless a system that says, look here, there is something inferior about women. Unless we confront that, we will not stop GBV, gender-based violence, because women are violated purely and simply because they are women, nothing else.
Indeed. I want to concur your words. One part of the body, the whole body becomes yakakamba. So you've said something very profound, that when the body of Christ, even if it's just a limb or it's just a hair, it is painful, the church cannot keep quiet. And therefore, I want to to talk about the role of church in condoning this act of gender-based violence. Most particularly, I want to say this because most women within the church have cried about this, that men within the spaces of church, they are abusive. It can be today, it can be me, today somebody else. But the fact is that us, and I'm including all the men within the Methodist Church, that they are abusive, be it emotionally, be it physically, be it in any other form, or sexually, in most cases. And sometimes not even sexually, when we find maybe a man has raped, but how we look at women and address them with our eyes, how we sexually harass women within the spaces of worship. Therefore, what is the role of church? And for example, we've seen many events where women in the church are crying, and sometimes we don't even know where these cases go to and where they end up. We don't see the verdict. But I just want to know, as a church, particularly coming from the campaign that says freedom from fear, that was initiated by the presiding bishop. What is the role of church? What is the role of all of us, particularly men in the church? I will repeat this because I want to say, I believe that men must be in the center of the fight against GBV, because it is us who are the perpetrators of this. And therefore, what is the role of us men within the church to stop this?
Thank you so much, and I agree with my colleagues in all the sentiments that they've shared. We sometimes, I think I should begin there, we sometimes give so much credit to the church and look for answers in the church when the church is compromised already and the church cannot help itself.
Indeed.
So when you're asking me a question that says, what is the role of the church, you're putting me in a predicament, because the church is bruised and the church is bleeding itself. And the church has not been able to exhibit ways of how it should be dealing with issues of gender-based violence and femicide. We have not been honest enough to say we can't even help ourselves because this issue is bigger than us. But I always say, this issue is so much personal, and it should be approached in such. It has to be every man for himself, acknowledging that I do personally have a problem. Utadumbuiselo, I think, has put it very much so clearly, that we are sitting here around the table as men tonight and having this conversation about issues of gender-based violence.
Right.
And our starting point has to be that we're sitting at the point of privilege. Secondly, it has to be that we might be the perpetrators sitting around this table and having this conversation, because you don't know what I am. I don't know what he is. He is himself in his space, and he does what he thinks works for him when he deals with women. So I can't speak for him. I've got to speak for myself. The role of the church is supposed to be, and I choose my words very carefully, the role of the church ought to be. And I'm going to draw a picture in responding to that question.
Indeed.
There is a show in one of these BBC stations, and it is about a hospital. The storyline, the narrative revolves around the nurses and the doctors and everybody else who works into this particular hospital. So there's a lady who's admitted in the hospital, and she's not comfortable because of the condition that she has. And this one doctor comes to her and says to her, in her fears, at a point of fear, the doctor says to her, "We fix things here." And I want you to see that picture. When this doctor says to this lady, "We fix things here," because she knows that she is in the right place. The role of the church ought to be that we are a platform that fixes things. But we have become a platform that also contributes into the pain and the violation of women, unfortunately. That's why I'm saying we then have got to move away from the church as a collective and begin to talk to individuals and say, what is your role as a man in the Methodist church, or any church for that matter? And what is your personal response to issues of gender-based violence? And if we move from that departure point, then we're getting somewhere. As long as we still respond as a collective, as long as we still protest as a collective, as long as we still march as a collective, as long as we still speak as a collective, as a church, and have all these programs that we put onto the table and say everybody must follow this program without diagnosing each other personally, without saying to men of the church, get onto the scale and weigh yourself. And if you find yourself light, then find Christ, because Christ can help you into this space. So the role of the church is compromised. That's the only response I can give you right now. The role of the church is supposed to be a platform that fixes things. It's supposed to be a platform of healing. It's supposed to be a place of refuge where victims would run to and say, I found help in the center of the church. But the role of the church now has become rhetorical. We talk about these things, but we can't even measure ourselves, unfortunately.
Indeed. Just before I come to Umfundisi Kamza, I just want to get from the commission. You know, I was reading this other story where a lady argues. I'm just following up from what Umfundisi has just said. One of the ladies argues that, you see, in most cases, the men who are in the forefront when it comes to matches and handing over the memorandums of understanding to police station, the men that are allowed about gender-based violence, unfortunately, behind doors, they are the ones who are very violent to their partners. I remember this other time on social media, there was a young man, I just forgot his name, a young man whom people were asking, this young man has just posted about the stop of gender-based violence. Do you think we are acting? Do you think as men we don't understand this struggle? Do you think as men we are just doing it for the sake of to be seen? Do you think deep down as men, what can we do?
Look, this is difficult. What makes it difficult, what you're saying? What makes it difficult is that, and I'll go back to my opening address. Look, there is nobody who wants to lose privilege.
Indeed.
Look, power by its very nature. You get drunk by power. So there is nobody who voluntarily. That's why even the struggle in this country, the struggle in Africa against colonialism, against apartheid, was never given on the platter. People had to die. The women in 1956, we're meeting here because we are on their shoulders. They had to die. They had to give in something. They had to make sure that their voice is loud and clear. So what am I saying? The point I'm saying that it's, and Umfundi's links to Umfundi's Tatinyani, and I fully agree and support what he's saying. It has to, you see, the private has to be personal, has to be political. All of them must meet. That I must hold him accountable. He must hold me accountable. Biblically, I must be my brother's keeper. But I know Mfundisi wena. That look Mfundisi. You stand here, holy, you preach, you say hallelujah, you speak in tongues, but we know what you do. So the point I'm making with what you're saying is that until we come to a point where I would not look the other way, I would say that, but you know, you don't pay maintenance. You say that, behold, I'm a new creator. I got this child before I got married. I got him or her in sin. Until we make it personal, until we say, I own up, I have this child, I must pay maintenance. We don't think that this is GBV, because GBV, we tend to think is physical. Imagine the burden that is disproportionately given to women every day. So you'll be sitting in the church, but you know that this man, he doesn't pay papgeld. And this man, you think that, and you know that this man is emotional abusive. You know this man is financial abusive. The point I'm making in answering your question is that, indeed, it has to be, I must take ownership. But it can't be easy, Putwam. What makes it not easy, is that power, by its very nature, you can't give away easy. Look at what's happening in our country now. The people that who are supposed to understand what this national transformative agenda is all about. You have resistance, and we're bound to have resistance as men, because you look, who wants to? You see, you have eaten your custard in jail. I use those because where I come from an extreme poor family. You would not allow anybody to kick you here. You'll fight and defend. The point I'm making is that all of us sitting here and men out there, we will always defend, and will always rationalize, justify our violence, because we want the status quo to remain the same. I mean, a lot of people in the church here were asking themselves that, look, we will see what's going to happen. The presiding bishop, Umama, Some are saying this, are very cynical, saying it quietly, because for them, the status quo benefits us. Keep it intact, protect it, safeguard it, sustain it.
Let's talk. Let's talk
before you. Before you pose more questions, I think what has already been said is mouthful.
Yes.
I think it's important that we agitate on some of these issues. Yes, that have been said. Is making a point about power. It's making a point about looking at an individual, and quite correctly so. I fully agree that there is no evidence of Aviwe in the Bible, because you would know that the psychology of violence and oppression from the dialectical materialism that I was talking about, that a class doesn't easily and willingly give away power. The structure of the society decides that a certain group of people shall be treated differently from another group so as to protect the privilege that you are talking about. Let's make an example, a clear example about oppression and slavery.
Yes.
In America, for an example, you would know that for a long time, African Americans, even during the time of census, they were referred to as the third of the fifth, but not a complete whole, which makes it easy from the next person to say, this is not really a human being. You know, this is a third of the fifth, and therefore I can do as I want. Look at the history of the Hutus and the Tutsis. Here, not far away from us, in the land of Paul Kagame. The Hutus were betrayed as rats. Look at the history of the Holocaust. That's what happens if you trace the history of how one class gets to a point of oppressing another class. And it is the same issue with men and women. And I think it's important when we talk about gender-based violence that we do not always think gender means female.
Yes.
Sometimes men also experience. Sometimes some men are abused. You know, they are also victims. But that's a subject for another day.
But the numbers contradict. The numbers are very low.
I fully
so as a result, we should not even begin to, because we'll muddy the water.
Yes.
Because I'm not out.
Yes.
I have a difficulty with that.
Yes.
But that is not the point that I'm making. But I'm making the point that even if you read the Bible, from Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 11, you don't see a trace or an indication that indicates that in God's, because those who want to treat women as subhuman, they would say that women were created a little lesser than men.
Yeah.
But read the Bible. God, it doesn't matter from which tradition, there is no evidence, at least from Genesis chapter 1 to Genesis chapter 11. Why? Because when God created human being, God was creating humankind. And the issue is rooted in the structure. There is a privilege that one class is protecting. Are we together?
Yes,
there are reasons. And those reasons, I dare to say, they are not in the mind. There is no way. It's like racism. There is no way that you meet a white person and that person hates you on the basis that you are black. It is because of material interest. So there is an interest that one is protecting. That's what the point that I'm wanting to add and make with regards to the importance of the struggles of the classes.
I want us to dwell more on privilege, particularly on male privilege. Let us
end. I just want to end this an end.
Yes.
You end this purely and simply because you have a penis. You're a male because you have a penis.
Yes.
It somehow elevates. I don't understand the patriarchy. It's toxic to us as well. But one understand the patriarchy. It's not only toxic to women. Patriarchy, look, I've never seen a system that says when you hurt, it says, I know window.
Yes. That's what I want to talk about, but also how, I think you touched on your opening statements, on how young men are groomed to think that they are superior or better than women. Now, back at home, let's talk about the traditions. I'm closer. Yes, so it's what Umfunzi Uqamza referred to as a structure of the society. You know, from the young age, you know, you are being taught that we don't, and therefore there are some things that are expected. And the moment you meet a lady who's more successful than you, who's more educated than you, then you feel threatened.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the privilege and the societal structure of how. I mean, like I was saying to my brother the other time that I feel that this thing, how the society is painting a male to be, it's what gives. It's what gives a male to think that, hey man, no one can say anything to me, and all those things. So, how is the societal structure has made an impact into gender-based violence?
Now, I was hoping that you will ask Utadu Bota that question, but I will try to
I will give you can join in as well.
Because he passionately engaged onto it when it came onto the table.
Yes.
When
which had problems about violence against men. I'm not, by the way, saying that it does not happen. But in Nagyam, it's here. If we start saying, you see, it's like when white people start saying, but we're being oppressed, and we are being, we're poor, We know the face of poverty here. The face of violence are women. So we must never forget it. Because
must never.
even it's what we do is, then you begin to muddy the water.
Yes.
Because gender talks, or gender means the social construction.
Yes.
How society says that when, as a male, you do this, female, you do this. But we know violence, that there is evidence statistically that says that it is women who are at the cold phase of violence. And we must never lose it. Because if we lose it, it's like you look in America when black people say Black Lives Matter, white people say all lives matter, and that's not true.
Same thing.
That's not true.
If I give you my phone super noise, same thing is happening even here. There was a hashtag says all men are trash, and there were men who boldly said, "I am not trash because I haven't done 1, 2, and 3." And my answer to that, Mr. Paul, was that if we are quarter to comes and kunezinja. Because if men are perceived as or they are giving the society this image of being violent, and therefore women have got a right to be scared of all of us. Because they never know who's dangerous, who's not. As Palwanga, Lona is not an abuser, this one is an abuser.
But also, the one thing, just before Mfundi, thank you, but also, let's unpack. When women say that men are trash, they are not talking about individuals, exactly your point, but they are talking about the structure that privileges us.
Yes.
If we have to walk here, the four of us will fear one thing only, will be marked. But you know, a woman who comes out of the church with us, chances are that she'll be raped in her lifetime. Yes. So women, when you say men are trash, it has nothing to do with us. It has a lot to do with the structure that privileges us. It's like when I say white people in South Africa are racist. It has nothing to do with all whites. We know your Joe Slovo, your Bears, no dear. We can go on and on and on and on. The point I'm making is that when women say men are trash, they're saying we must take responsibility, the four of us, and say the fault is with us.
It's with us. For this,
I think the unfortunate thing is that all of these structures are men created.
Yes.
And sometimes they've been traced into the Bible, whether it is distorted narrative or not. But they seem to be finding a backup somewhere.
True.
And use that as the ultimate truth of how these things were meant to be. Our societies are structured in that way, unfortunately. It's men who are sitting on top, and men have got to concede to the fact that they are privileged, simply because they have a penis, as he would put it, and simply because we're just men. And he's made a couple of examples of what would happen if we would walk out here as men. And I want to take it even further. Women are not only scared that they would be raped, they would be killed today. And that's how society has been arranged. Pre-history, or take it back right into the history. Men put themselves onto the top of this pyramid. And the head, if you would use a biblical language, when they then assumed the responsibility or the position of putting themselves as the head of the house. And that then a teaching infiltrated into the men, and men began to believe that. Sometimes it is not even expressed in words. Just the environment that you grow up in as a man. You can see that my father is a boss here. And you look at everything else within the community, the society, you can see, oh, well, to be a man is to be a boss. And women, the places in the kitchen. There's specific roles that they are meant to do. There's certain things that women cannot do. And if a woman, then the woman would be in the wrong. On the basis of that, the woman is a woman. And that's the structure we have created ourselves. And I'm submitting that it is us who would have to deal with that structure of the society and the hierarchy of the society and begin to look into this thing differently and accommodate everybody. And the picture that has always been used in the church, and I think it was when Ivan Abrams was the presiding bishop, there was a theme of the table at some stage. A theme of the table. And he spoke to the types of the tables that we find in our homes and said, as the church, I'm calling you onto a round table where everybody sits around this table and they sit equally. Because this structure that the society has and the hierarchy of the structure of the society is that the man as the head of the house has to sit onto this side of the table, the top side, and everybody sits from there according to their ranks onto the table. So it is not most of the time things that are said now, it is things that have been there. And we just learn them by seeing them, and we grow up thinking that these things are right. And I want to end with this. Going back to the conversation, the initial conversation we had. If you look into the church today, or even the society at large, when we talk about issues of gender-based violence, our concentration is always on the victims. And unfortunately, most of the victims are women. There is no platforms for perpetrators. The church has not created that space for the perpetrators. Women, you said, and he said, don't rape themselves. But men are not involved into these conversations. There is no AA for perpetrators. But there's AA for alcoholics. For alcoholics to go into a platform and reflect onto their lives and into this thing that they're doing and find ways of empowering each other and coming out of that space a better person. We don't have that.
Maybe the solution, Fundis, is that, the men's guilds and what must actually begin to have a different narrative. That, but there are these realities because women are dying at the hands of men. I'm saying that the AA, probably what you're saying, the AA, it has to be, what is it that men's guilds are talking about? What are they talking about? I'm saying, and I want to propose and submit this evening, probably the programs in the men's movement in the church, in the Methodists, must begin to radically change. So that it can't be, as I said, opening, it can't be business as usual. See, we can't always sing and praise, important, must be done. But probably, we must sing a new song.
Indeed. But I just want to say to the viewers at home that the conversation is open. Should you want to ask a question or engage us on this topic, as these men who are here, we are more than allowed. We will be taking questions as time comes and also taking comments from home. But on this,
thank you. Umfuso is pushing us to another level, which is a very important one. When you talk about abusers anonymous, that we need to begin an AA for men. Those, because we know that before you could even be helped, you need to admit that you have a problem. I agree, and I'm with you on that. But, one of the things that we need to remember that we should talk about as men is what I have termed elsewhere spiritual disturbia. That there is something much deeper in us that makes us to behave in the manner that we do. And perhaps we need, and the church is very much needs to be very much part of the solution. At some point, the church declared that it has AIDS. I would want to say, Izulu Malime, we will get there eventually. But currently, we are for the society as the church. We exist for the society. Without the society, there is no point for us to exist because the church is in this world. The church is for the world. Perhaps one of the things that we need to talk about is that we have identified that there is something wrong in the structure. There is something wrong in our upbringing. But there are serious issues that we as men are unable to deal with. Perhaps the expectation at times becomes too much. Perhaps being all these things at once becomes too much. And we have been taught that men do not cry. Men can do it. Perhaps we as the church should be a wiggle of ensuring that we restructure, as you said, that these things do not structure themselves. These institutions do not put themselves together. It is people who decide, as Sobukwe would put it, that ours is to be the light, and the masses will see the way.
The question that I have,
Yes.
because there's always an element of power. And power is beautiful. Power is nice.
Oh, yeah.
And I get you.
No, you
Exactly.
Who wants to be powerless?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, but, and because we are, honestly, if I would put it so bluntly, in the jungle. The world has become a jungle. So it's the survival of the fittest.
And the elimination of the weakest.
Exactly. Are you expecting patriarchy to sit around the table and say, we are going to relinquish certain powers? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen easily.
Yeah.
Now you have got to isolate the numbers onto the table and begin to talk to Mbuyiselo and talk to Akon and say, look at what is happening. What is your take in what is happening? And how then do you respond to what is happening? So that you create these little structures around the community and the society. You have one person, one man that says, in my space, this is not going to happen. And if it then moves to the next man, then you move drastically into a position where you have a community that is conscious that there is a new way and a new response in how we should be responding and dealing with women.
That means, Mfundisi, that you are saying to me that I will not accept a sexist jokes from you. Don't send me a pornographic picture of a woman that you are insulting. You are body shaming. That I will tell you that, look, I don't think that you represent me. With this culture, if you say that, I will not accept you. I will not accept it. So the point I'm making is that, the individual things, but the church, the pulpit must be used for different purposes. The pulpit must actually be used to dismantle patriarchy. It must be used to dismantle patriarchy. Imagine if Abafundis, both of them, every Sunday stands in front and say that all the men in the church stand up and own up. What's going to happen? It's a best way of dismantling patriarchy. Where Mfundisi stands up and say that I stand here, I have unearned power purely and simply because of my maleness. If you imagine every Sunday that it becomes a norm, like we have it now as we speak. I mean, it becomes our norm. We're having a mask now.
Yes.
We must reach a point. You see, if you go out without a mask, there's something wrong about you. You are abnormal. You can't behave like Donald Trump and think that it will go away. It will go away. The point I'm making is that the pulpit must be used as our mask, in the sense that it must be something. It must be one of the articles of our faith. Where ministers say to us, look here, the church will always speak against GBV. But the men here, when they go out and mobilize a strategy, evangelize, the message, the narrative must be different. And that narrative for me is that I will be my brother's keeper. I will call him out. He must call me out. He will not send me a sexist joke or a pornographic. He will not send me a penis. He will not send me a vagina, and we laugh about it.
You send each other those things. One of the things, before you get over to the viewers, I think the very nature, Mfundisi, of our faith begins with an individual. You know, there used to be an advert in the television. Imagine the possibility of an HIV-free generation. And the tagline, it begins with you. John, you'll forgive us, we are theologians. We'll refer to the Bible, chapter 1, in the calling of disciples. If you read the genuine literature, you discover that Christ does not call a community first. He begins with an individual. And I think the work of disciple people in forming disciples for the transformation, being a transforming discipleship movement, we need to go back, as you are proposing, to ensure that we disciple people. Perhaps there is something important that we need to take home, that we need to begin with an individual. Be it we use the pulpit to conscientize our people with the hope that we are not going to lose Umnikelo, but also
we may lose it.
To make sure that people, even your family, there is something that in the Methodist tradition we call Christian witnessing.
Yes.
That your family ikwazi ukuthi bonanike izinto zakhe zijike zabatsha. Perhaps the first thing, as I would be submitting, is to be like that hospital. To say in the church, no one is beyond repairs.
We fix things.
We fix things.
Yes, I want us to come to conclusion. If there are any questions from the viewers, we'll take them just after this. But I just want to shift you a bit to another perspective of how besixhosa sikhule kuthiwa umthi ugotywa usemncinci. What as we are trying to dismantle the society, how it structures men, the structures how it does this perception of men, how they should be. I want you gentlemen to give you three, maybe two perspectives of this, so that you can maybe comment on them. One, ngesixhosa, how best can we use usiko lolwaluko to shape a young man, to say lento le ihamba kanje, lento kuthiwa umuntu umbamba osemncinci, and also at schools, maybe perhaps apha ecaweni abanye bafika sebebadala, but how best can we start it at the younger age to say, let us fix uba ukhulu sazi into yokubana we are all equal. Ukhulu sazi into yokubana this is your sister, this is not an object that you can abuse. How best can we do that?
I think the best thing we must do for it is we start, and this is where the narrative is, that must change. I have grandchildren.
Yes.
My responsibility is, I have granddaughters and grandsons. But I will not say anything to the granddaughters, because they don't rape themselves. So the narrative must change. At an early age, I must say to Lereko and say, my boy, when you look at Zukanyo Kakambe, that's her body. That's where it must start. That offense, that this is, you have to take responsibility. So that we must move away from saying to girls, don't walk at night. Don't be in that shebeen. We must move away from saying to girls, don't. We must move away from saying, this is the change of the narrative at an early age. But let me move on. What is it that in our Sunday schools, we are in a crisis, and we must define it for what it is. We are in a crisis, and this crisis calls for us to sing a new song. But in the churches, in the Sunday, Sunday school, what is the curriculum at Sunday school? Our boys, but what are they taught? I keep going back that, look, the times are such that we are called to do things differently. And doing things differently, it means, to your question, that we have to shift the focus and talk to the boy child and forget about saying to girls that, look, don't wear that mini skirt because she's entitled to that mini skirt. If we do that, we'll move to somewhere else.
Yes, for this, from me, I will start from where Ubunbui I take a call. We've got to start at home. Our homes have become so dysfunctional because of many things that are happening in the household. Secondly, men have got to take responsibility for the mess we're finding ourselves in. And I can stand in front of the viewers and everybody and everybody who's watching and everybody who's here and say, I am a mess myself. I'm a minister of the church, but I'm a mess. There's so many things that I wrestle with. There's so many things that I'm dealing with. And there's so many things that I wish I could be better in and do them differently, particularly when it comes to issues of women. Is it from my upbringing? Yes. But I've grown to be a man and I've got to take responsibility.
Yes.
And say, I have grown up now. I've got to make my own choices and make better choices to what I've known growing up. So there's a picture already that is up onto the wall. We seem not to be taking the picture off the wall. We seem to be talking with the picture on the wall. And kids don't listen to what we say most of the time.
They see us.
They see what we do, and they do exactly as we do. And I've said in one of the platforms that I was given an opportunity to speak to, a convention yamadoda, that you should be careful as men, because indlela abantwana abancinci ngoku ababulalana ngayo esikolweni nabalwa ngayo esikolweni ithi lento iyasulela.
Yes.
Lo msindo siwubona kodata selusebantwaneni. Now, if you have kids as young as 13 but can rape a child of 9 at school, then we are in trouble. Remove the picture altogether. If I would be harsh, I would say, Mdambo, this generation has to go for God to create something new. And then we would have a better chance. Secondly, it is the way we have perpetuated the distortion of how we read the scriptures, because they serve a certain group of people within the community. We've got to go in there. When we talk about scripture and the interpretation of the message in the scripture, we've got to say today, find strong women in the scriptures and begin to talk about them so that everybody would know that women can be strong. Don't find broken women all of the time. Because young girls listen to these stories and say, women have got to go through a dark tunnel to make it. Instead of saying, we are created onto the same path. We shift from the same point. We have all the opportunities together, and we move forward as the church. Train disciples, but train people who know Jesus. So that in my mess as umfundis, I know Idoba, I have Christ, who wishes to make me better every day. I struggle with certain things, but I know that there's a Jesus who wishes to make me better every day. When I fall, Christ deals with me, but I've got to be open for me to be dealt with. Lando yekutike amadoda cannot get in touch with their feelings. Remove that. It's a myth. Yeah. It distorts the picture.
But Mfundisi, nani ni abafundisi stand up and say, Mehana, you don't represent me. Mehana, as you the things your flavor of theology does not represent me. That abafundisi must feel revolted, must feel angry that one of us says this about women, that we will not sweep it under the carpet. We will not follow these things when women are dying and say, Mehana, you have your right to express these. But the church must actually say, abafundis must say, Mehana, you don't represent me. I will stand up and say, not the theology I know, not the Christ who was crucified.
Indeed. Fundis, do you want to say something on this? Because I think what Utata is saying, or what Utata is saying is just, it's important to have each other as men. We need to have each other accountable for our actions. You know, we need to hold each other accountable by saying, Dogbana, whoever, regardless of UP, Unjani, but we must be able to have you accountable for whatever thing that you do that does not represent us as men, young and old. And I'll start with Umfundis Uqams. I want us to have our closing remarks as we see song and hoping that these conversations will go on beyond just this Women's Month or beyond just those special periods where we say maybe 16 days against gender-based, but we know that each and every day, us as men, we are in the forefront of fighting this pandemic. I call it a pandemic because it is a pandemic. You know, it's a pandemic, it's a continuous thing. It affects the society. I am 27 years old, but I do see a gender-based free society in the future. But I believe it should start with me. For it to happen, I need to stand to say no. Then the rest will follow. So I foresee a gender-based free society. Things are not meant to be like this.
Yeah.
And so I want you, gentlemen, to have your closing remarks on this topic of gender-based free violence. And maybe if you want to submit a proposal or you want to pledge yourself to say, not in my name, you can do so. I'll give each 2 minutes each as we wrap up.
Thank you very much, Fowetu. I hope those who are viewing us from home will get to a point of understanding that we agree that we are a broken society. We are bringing up these issues not because we have solutions for all of them, but we are bringing them up because we have identified that there are issues, what I call with men, of spiritual dystonia. We are a broken people. We are a broken society. Indeed, each one of us, I know for myself, I may not be perfect, but I would not want these things to be done on my name. I would not want my children to emulate and say, I do this because I saw it from my father. I usually say when I speak in weddings, I would want to be a better man than who my father was because of the exposure. And so with regards to these cultural rights of passages, I don't want to touch on them. On their own, I think they are right, they are beautiful. But because along the way, they have been corrupted. To my sisters and the class that is oppressed, that is feeling the pain, I want to say to you, history has demonstrated it times without number that people do not willingly give away power. People do not willingly hand over privilege and power. And therefore, as we sit here, we also hope that our sisters shall emerge and be proponents of a gender-based free society. Lastly, the last thing that I want to say is that giving up is a luxury that we can never afford. But we are not going to build, not our church, not our nation, in a big bang solution. We are going to do it, beginning with each and every home, because the backbone of society are the homes, and the backbone of every progressive society are families in those particular societies. I am saying to us, let us go back. Let us go back. Let us go back and build the very fiber of society, the backbone, which is our homes. Let us, those of us who are fathers, let us strive. Let us strive. I am telling you, I'm not that old. I'm relatively young, even though I'm not young. But I had a very bad exposure of a father. I am finding my way of what it means to be a husband and a father. In fact, my role models are not from my own home, are from outside. And if we as a generation, one generation needs to plant, my brother. The other one needs to water the tree. And the other one needs to enjoy the shade. I am saying ours as a generation, our generational call is to make sure that we build families as they are the backbone of society. I submit. Thank you.
Well, I want to say that without being prescriptive, but women in the church, they're the majority. There should come a time where women rebel against the status quo. There must come a time where women, in the same way that the 1956 generation of women rebelled against the status quo, even in the church. I want to make that call and say that women must dismantle these structures because women are in the majority. In fact, it is women who sustain the churches in almost everything. But when it comes to substantive leadership positions, they are overlooked. They must, look, you can't, there is no freedom that you can ask for. You must demand freedom, demand freedom. But I want to end by saying that the Commission for Gender Equality, a Chapter 9 institution created by an Act of Parliament, we have, in all the 9 provinces, we have offices. And it's important for me to make this call that there is a toll-free number, that I wish to repeat and to talk about here. That this toll-free number, there are people who are there, who will answer, who will respond. The Commission for Gender Equality, it gives free legal services. Almost everything related to gender, to violence, to maintenance, to divorce, to rape. And this is the toll-free number, 0800 007 709. Let me repeat, 0800 007 709. Call in there. But also, when you are in the church and you are a man, don't look away. Don't look the other way. Call your brother out. Call me out, call Mfundis out, and say that so far and not further.
Mfundis.
Thank you so much. I think there's a number that you can also call MCO. Okay. I don't have the number now, but you can just check WW Methodist Church of Southern Africa. There's a number that is given that you can call if you face or you come across any issues of gender-based violence. But I want us to shift to what we seemed to be agreeing on. We've got to say even the perpetrators must call so that we can begin to have a conversation with everybody else when it comes to these issues. But I'll tell you a very interesting something that happened with me. I wrote with Facebook page, I think two months back, when we were dealing with these issues of gender-based violence, when we went right deep into it. I wrote there and said, I am an abuser. You can't believe how many people said, Mfundisi, you are joking. Because abuser perhaps has a certain face, a certain title, a certain look. People don't believe that Mfundisi can be an abuser. For that matter, including women who wrote to me and said, you can't be an abuser. We know just that you just wanted people to also come onto the board. And I'm going to repeat here, I'm an abuser. Because I have a potential of doing that. I've done that before. I'm dealing with it. And I can't continue to live and hide behind the pulpit, as you would put it. I have a couple of years dealing with this. Like an alcoholic, I tick onto my calendar. I tick days. And that's why I'm very much passionate about it, that you deal with it, but you tick days so that you don't relapse. And when you relapse, you know exactly what had happened and you deal with it. So that you get into a space where you're getting better. But I'm going to close with this because we're the church and because I'm a minister. I've been fascinated with the reading of the Exodus again. Particularly onto the role of women into that space. Beginning with the midwives. You can read that scripture again. The Exodus. When there was a call from Pharaoh that killed all the young boys. And the Hebrew midwives stood firmly against the call. When Pharaoh was notorious and everybody feared him. Yilento Moses ngapha ethafeni uThixo esithi buyela kuFaro Moses esithi ke ngizawumenza ntoni uFaro because uFaro is a huge thing and a very scary thing. But these women said, no, we're not going to do it because we fear God more than we fear Pharaoh. If you shift from that passage and go to the Nile River, where umama ka Moses emfake emanzini, look who is around. The scripture locates three important critical characters into that space. Umama ka Moses umfaka pha emanzini, then there's a sister, but there's Pharaoh's daughter onto the other side, who rescued this one boy. Between these three women, rescued this one boy because this boy was in the core of the mission of God. But if you read it with the eye or the spectacles of a woman, you would see that women are right at the center of God's mission. God had the power to create anything. God created us at the beginning, created Adam and Eve. God could have created Jesus Christ the same way he created Adam and Eve. But he thought to himself, let me use a young girl for the salvation of humankind. And went to Nazareth, wife of Manu Maria, a young girl. Look at what happens when Jesus comes out of the womb of the tomb. Mary is standing there. But we underread these passages of these strong women because we're wanting to perpetuate the patriarchal narrative, which gives us the power to be. There is no woman who wants to take over manhood. They want to coexist. Can't we create that platform and allow everybody to exist the same way as the image and the creation of God? And I call to all of us men to rethink how we have been brought up and find a way. If we're not going to do it for us, let's do it for the sake of Jesus Christ and his gospel. Thank you.
Thank you, Fundisi. There are many comments. There's no question actually, but there are many comments who are actually agreeing with what you are saying and also encouraging us as the church not to stop these conversations, not to stop trying to end the gender-based violence. Because gender-based violence, it has no boundaries. It doesn't have a face. It has no social or economic boundaries, but this one can be abused of this, but it just so it is us men who need to stop this. But for us to stop, we need to start by acknowledging that we are a problem to society. I think we all agree with that we need to start before we can go towards we agreed, but maybe perhaps it must be a session like Alcoholic Anonymous, will be referred to Abusers Anonymous, but we must first, for those people for us to get helped, we must first acknowledge that we are the problem. Be it you have abused or before or not, but you must know that we are a problem as males in the society. And therefore, I do see a gender-based free society, because if we continue with these conversations, even the upcoming generation, we know what is right and what is wrong, and that we are all equal. There's no one who's better than the other, and we don't own other people's bodies. We don't own the bodies of women. If women say no, they say no. So thank you very much, gentlemen, Mfundisi, Anele Panoi, thank you so much. Tatu Pot, Sabrela Kakulu, it's at night. The young people of the Methodist Church, they really benefited from your expertise in this field. Fundisi Utlamza, one of the people commenting on the page are saying, Unyansile, Malimi Zulu. Because now we sit into lab, Malimi Zulu. So we really appreciate, gentlemen, and I hope that these conversations will continue beyond this platform, but they will continue so they can reach even those who don't have access to internet, who are not interested in Facebook or anything, but it reaches them, because gender-based violence, it is irreversible. Thank you. It is irreversible and it is non-pathological. So those who know, who have been abused before, they will tell you that they suffer scars forever. Yeah. And I know sometimes they are saying that as males, maybe we take fame out of this. We don't, but we truly understand that it is us who are the problem, and therefore it is us who must be in the center of finding a solution to this problem. Because you sisters at home, you don't rape yourselves, you don't abuse yourselves, as the speakers have alluded, but it is us. So you are not the problem. It is us who are the problem. So it is us who must find solutions to ourselves. And therefore I just say, Apimakaya Sabonga, thank you for being here. And we hope that you will share the conversation with everyone, even those who are not on Facebook, so that this talk, this gospel